It's normal. I'm not normal. I'm perfecto.
The year 2026 was supposed to be the coronation of the immortal king, but instead, the streets of Lisbon are choked with the smoke of burning jerseys. Cristiano Ronaldo, the man who once defined Portuguese pride, has become the most hated figure in his own homeland. This isn't because of age or missed penalties. It is because of a meticulously orchestrated betrayal from the one person he trusted with his legacy. By the end, you will see a legend dismantled not by a rival, but by a ghost from his past seeking a hollow, heartbreaking justice. The air in Madeira was thick with the scent of salt water and the bitter sting of a dying idol's reputation. In the summer of 2026, the giant bronze statue of Cristiano Ronaldo did not stand as a monument of triumph, but as a lightning rod for national fury. It had been spray-painted with the word traitor in jagged, blood-red letters. The hate was a living, breathing thing that swept through the cafes of Lisbon and the cliffs of Funchal. For the first time in 2 decades, the name Ronaldo was spat out like a curse. People weren't just angry, they were wounded. In a secluded villa overlooking the Atlantic, the architect of this hatred sat in a darkened room, illuminated only by the cold glow of a tablet. This was Tiago, a man whose face the world didn't recognize, but whose heart was a map of old scars. 20 years ago, Tiago had been the other boy in the sporting CP Academy, the one whose talent matched Cristiano's, but whose career ended in a snapped ligament and a forgotten promise. While Cristiano rose to the heavens, Tiago fell into the shadows. Watching the man he once called a brother claim the life they were supposed to share together. The scandal that had ignited the hate was subtle and devastating. It wasn't a crime. It was a perceived lack of heart. A series of leaked, deeply personal audio recordings, artfully edited by Tiago, made it appear as though Ronaldo had mocked the very people of Portugal, calling them stepping stones for his personal brand. The recordings were fake, a masterpiece of deepfake synthesis, but the world didn't care about the truth. They cared about how the lie made them feel. They felt small. They felt used. They felt the envy of a man who had everything looking down on those who had nothing. Tiago watched a live feed of a protest outside the National Stadium. Fans were throwing their CR7 boots into a bonfire, the rubber stench rising like a funeral pyre. He felt a surge of cold, electric joy. His goal was simple: to make Cristiano feel the loneliness of the bench, not the roar of the crowd. He wanted the king to be in exile in his own castle. He had spent years studying Cristiano's speech patterns, his insecurities, and his private griefs to craft a narrative of arrogance that the public was all too eager to believe. "You took my future, Cristiano," Tiago whispered to the empty room, his voice trembling with a mixture of love and loathing. "Now I take your past." The plan was moving into its final phase. It wasn't enough for the world to hate him. Cristiano had to believe he deserved it. Tiago had planted seeds of doubt within the inner circle, making the legend believe his own family was the source of the leaks. The isolation was almost complete. The silence inside Cristiano's villa in Quinta da Marinha was more suffocating than the roar of the mobs outside. In the winter of 2026, the walls that once held 1,000 trophies felt like a high-end prison. Every time Ronaldo looked at his phone, he saw a nation that had turned its back. The hate wasn't a flicker, it was a forest fire. People were burning his image in the Praça do Comércio, and the Portuguese Federation was under immense pressure to strip him of his honorary titles. The man who had carried the flag for 2 decades was now being told he was no longer welcome to fly it. Tiago stood in the kitchen of the villa, masquerading as a newly hired physical therapist. He had spent months altering his appearance. A beard, glasses, a different gait. creeping into the inner sanctum of the man he intended to ruin. He watched from the doorway as Cristiano sat on the edge of a weight bench, head in his hands. The legend's shoulders, once broad enough to carry the hopes of millions, were slumped. The betrayal felt internal to Cristiano. Because of Thiago's careful manipulation of encrypted messages, Ronaldo was convinced that the leaks were coming from his own sister, Katia. The envy Thiago felt wasn't just for the fame, it was for the loyalty Cristiano took for granted. "They're calling for a boycott of the farewell match, Cristiano," Thiago said softly, stepping into the room. He handed Ronaldo a bottle of water, his fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "The fans feel you've looked down on them for too long. They say you've become a god who forgot he was born of dust." Every word was a needle, expertly placed. Thiago wasn't just a therapist. He was a whisperer of insecurities. He knew that Cristiano's greatest fear wasn't losing his speed, but losing his connection to the people who made him a king. Cristiano looked up, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "I never said those things, Thiago. You know me. I am Portugal. How can they believe I would mock the streets I played on as a child?" The heartbreak in his voice was genuine, a raw sound that almost made Thiago flinch. But then Thiago remembered the cold hospital room 20 years ago, the way the academy directors had stopped answering his calls the moment his knee gave out, while they flew Cristiano to Manchester. The greed for a life he never got to live overrode any lingering sense of brotherhood. Thiago walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain. Far below, at the gates of the estate, a small group of teenagers was throwing eggs at the stone pillars. These were kids who had grown up with CR7 posters on their walls, now fueled by the scandalous leaks Thiago had fabricated. "It's not about what you said anymore," Thiago lied, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's about the fact that they are ready to believe it. They are tired of your perfection, Cristiano. They want to see you bleed." As he spoke, he checked his watch. The final stage of the character assassination was set for that evening. A simulated video that would prove Ronaldo was leaving the country forever to avoid his fans. The trap was closing, and the king was too heartbroken to see the hunter standing right beside him. The night of the final farewell match arrived, but the national stadium was not filled with cheers. Instead, a haunting, rhythmic whistling echoed through the stands, the traditional Portuguese sign of deep disrespect. Cristiano stood in the tunnel, dressed in the iconic red jersey, his hands trembling. He looked toward the pitch where he had once been a god, now seeing only banners of scorn. Behind him, Thiago adjusted the straps on Cristiano's shin guards, his face a mask of professional care. The air was thick with the scent of damp grass and the ozone of a gathering storm. "They won't stop, will they?" Cristiano asked, his voice a ghost of its former power. He wasn't looking for a tactical answer. He was looking for a reason to keep breathing. Thiago leaned in close, his shadow falling over the legend's number 7. "The world has a short memory for kindness, but a long one for perceived greed," Thiago whispered. He felt the weight of the moment, the culmination of 2 decades of envy and carefully nursed pain. He had successfully turned a national hero into a pariah, all while standing close enough to feel the man's heartbeat. As Cristiano walked onto the field, the hate reached a deafening crescendo. The booing was a physical wall of sound. In the VIP box, the seat usually reserved for his family was empty. Thiago had intercepted the tickets and sent forged messages to his mother and sisters, telling them Cristiano wanted them nowhere near him. The isolation was absolute. Cristiano played 90 minutes like a man in a trance. He missed a penalty, and the stadium erupted in mocking laughter. The legend was broken, and the scandal of his arrogance had become an accepted truth in every Portuguese household. After the match, the stadium emptied quickly, leaving a cold, hollow silence. Cristiano didn't go to the locker room. He walked back to the center circle and sat on the grass, looking up at the empty seats. Thiago walked out to meet him, shedding his glasses and his subservient posture. For the first time, he let his true face show. The face of the boy from the academy whose knee had shattered while Cristiano's career soared. He sat down next to the man he had ruined, the man who was now the most hated figure in Portugal. "Why, Thiago?" Cristiano asked, sensing the shift in the air. He didn't even have the strength to be angry. Thiago reached out and took a handful of the sacred turf, letting it slip through his fingers like dust. "I didn't do it for money, and I didn't do it for the world," Thiago said, his voice cracking with a sudden, devastating realization. "I did it so that you would finally be as alone as I was. I wanted you to have nothing left but me." He looked at Cristiano, expecting to see fury, but saw only a reflection of his own hollow soul. The goal was achieved. The world hated Cristiano Ronaldo, and the legend would die in exile. But as Thiago looked at the broken man beside him, the victory tasted like poison. He had destroyed his only friend to prove they were equals in suffering. Cristiano didn't fight back. He simply leaned his head on Thiago's shoulder and wept, unaware that the person comforting him was the one who had pulled the trigger. The king was dead, the nation was bitter, and Thiago was finally seen, but he was holding a corpse in a graveyard of his own making.